I think, firstly, some comment about the nature of the speed at which this is all taking place. I mean, the development of technology, this kind of technology, artificial intelligence, is so rapid at the moment. I think there's a concern to be had that ethics will not keep up with this. This is something we need to keep an eye on. Now, of course, this has already been acknowledged by various governments and institutions who have recognized the challenges of artificial intelligence, broadly speaking, not just in healthcare, and have sought to implement ethical frameworks to ensure that AI technologies are developed and operate within those bounds. But of course, this also involves, to some extent, guesswork about where artificial intelligence will go. Now, the application of artificial intelligence in healthcare is, I think, a specific area of concern that, I mean, there's something of a dearth in consideration of it, particularly if you look at these documents. One exception to this, I think, would be the UNESCO recommendations on the ethics of artificial intelligence. Now, whilst artificial intelligence might enable things like chatbots, which seek to address matters of mental health, as indeed they do now, there is a difficulty here with, obviously, with questions of replacement of human interaction. Yet at the same time, I think it is worth mentioning that it might mean that some people who are suffering but who wouldn't otherwise seek help may be able to be reached by such means. That is a consideration. Artificial intelligence, I think, also promises advances in swiftness and range of diagnosis, accuracy in medical procedures, and even things like the remote conducting of more complicated surgeries, perhaps even in parts of the world that wouldn't otherwise have access to such surgeries. Now, I think the biggest challenge will be really whether we remain attentive to what artificial intelligence developments do for our understanding of human nature, our understanding of the human person. Whilst it's often the case that AI is seen through the lens of science fiction and the concern about artificial intelligence and robots taking over the world, this kind of thing, that instead really a kind of reverse constellation of that is the real concern, which is that as things develop, whether it pushes us to think differently about how what we understand human persons to be. So even if the human element in healthcare is fully preserved, there might be ways in which the very existence of artificial intelligence causes us to reconsider what we understand human beings to be. So the way in which an AI system would reason its way to a diagnosis might encourage the thought that we should also reason in the same way because it's better, it's faster, and so as a result overlook the uniqueness of human experience and the fact that artificial intelligence should really only ever be a tool and not really not a model for use in healthcare. And I think central in what must be resisted in that I think is any sense of viewing the human being as a kind of machine. I mean, which already does happen, I think, in some ways, often in very subtle ways, as though artificial intelligence is simply a more accurate and faster way of doing human kinds of things, human thinking. Rather, it seems to me important to emphasize the differences here, I think, and the uniqueness of human modes of thought and action. I think that's what the biggest challenge is in thinking about these things.
One of the difficulties is avoiding transmitting our biases and our prejudices to AI, because of course that's being programmed. I dread to think what happens if we tell them to behave ethically like human beings.
Well, I think that does happen, doesn't it? That's why both in search engines and chatbots that they've looked at, they tend to reflect the prejudices of people, which I think is. I don't think that is a danger so long as we treat them in that way. I think there is a danger if we think somehow they're objective and they don't share our prejudices, whereas they might have picked up bad habits from people, but in a way which we don't think to challenge.
And the question of bias, is one of the recurring themes you find across all these documents that deal from various governments and bodies and institutions on recommendations about AI ethics as one of the key concerns. Yeah,
I think especially when it comes to mental health, if because that's an area that you raised, whereas what people need is people.
Yeah.